Um, all right. So, what did y'all think of Aaron's paper? We watched the ad last time, the hamsters. They do a pretty good job. Yeah, could you start to see the parts? How this introduction get us in there, and then we've got to have that theoretically. Come on, magic happen. Oh, we got lights. Okay, click there. We got to have that. No magic. No magic. No magic. Oh, still no magic. But we've got to have that introduction gets people in it, and then make sure that we identify the what it is you're talking about. So if you're talking about one commercial, like in this case, then that's going to be, like here he says, a clear example is Kia's 2004. So Kia, boom, there's the author, and right there the date. Remember this APA, boom, author date, author date. So Kia's 2014, and then he gives the title of the YouTube video. So he puts that in quotes, and just the way they wrote it. Where they show the stereotype that if people change themselves to be skinny, good-looking, and drive a nice car, then people will be liked more and treated as a celebrity. The thing is not everybody can be like actors and models, and there is nothing wrong with that. The problem comes when people start thinking less of someone or treating them differently because they don't meet the stereotypes or standards we've put on each other. And so that comes together to his as the answer to, in terms of values or stereotypes or whatever it is. What is this commercial saying about it in general? Notice now, why does he have this section scooched over? Four lines, right? So no. That's MLA. I get confused. But no, it's also got to do with 4. In MLA, remember, if we have 4 lines, like we're typing it up, and we have 4 lines or more, then we're going to do that indented quote. Technically, that's what it's called. In Texas, I think that's scooch it over. That's my theory. It's scooched. Let's see samples. Let's go find a fat world. A fat world. There we go. So here, when we look at that, if this was 4 lines or more, so you take this, so here you are, you're going along, and you're like, okay, I like this quote. So you copy it, paste it, make sure and put, because he says Kavanaugh, boom, 1986, that date right after it, APA, states in his article, Idols of the Marketplace, and that's always something you can do that will make it a little bit longer, is also good form, right, to give not just the author's name, but the title too, at least the first time you mention it. You don't want to just like repeat it one after the other where it's repetitive in terms of your style, but putting that in there makes it a little longer. It's also kind of part of that formal thing. If you have what somebody does, putting that credibility in there, like with Gene Kilborn, who we read today, you can say, according to Kilborn, boom, whatever the date is, who is a specialist in media and its effects, there's credibility. So already we've made it a little bit longer, little bits here and there help, but it also becomes more formal, and we're making sure that people know, hey, this person isn't just, somebody hanging out. Okay, Idols in the Marketplace. And then you're like, okay, I want to give this quote. And you copy and paste that quote in, 'cause it's all online, or you can retype it if you want. You make sure you match your font, right? Make sure the color, everything like that. And you say, okay, in MLA, if it was 4 or more, so 1, 2, 3. In MLA, we wouldn't scoot this over. It's got to be 4 or more. So or actually more than 4. We're heading toward a handful, so it could be 4 and like a little bit, right? In APA, it's got to be 40 words. So I'm just going to highlight it, and then I look down here at the bottom, and it says 51 out of 1,474 words, and I can click on that, and it'll tell me 51 words. It tells you characters, all that kind of stuff. So since it's 51, that's more than 40. Enter. And then, get rid of the tab if your computer automatically tabs it, and just do the indent button right there, theoretically. There we go. Scooch it over just like that. Okay. And here, I don't know if I messed that up or whatever. We want to move that back, because remember, when you give a quote, you want to talk about it. So don't just start, I was wondering how long it was going to take. I was fixing to start a betting pool, but it's no problem. So remember, we don't want to start that new paragraph right after a quote, because if you just give people quotes and you're not saying something about it, the point is, what do you think? Right? So we've got to have that. So that's why that's scooted over. And it doesn't have quote marks, because when we scoot it over, we're saying this is a quote. If we put those quote marks, what we're saying is this is a quote, this is a quote. Just once. Assume your readers are smart. That's a cool thing. Okay. So I like this one for that example because it shows us that. Now remember, these can be the kiss of death. X's, big X's on your paper. We don't want X's. We want smiley faces and check marks. That's what teachers put whenever they're happy. Check marks mean, oh, cool, good job, good job. Smiley faces, when I used to grade papers by hand, my smiley faces, unlike my sister who taught first grade for 30 years, hers look so cute. You look at them and you're like, oh, I want to smile. Mine look like sick, twisted serial killer smiley face. Like I could write them on there and I'd be like, that was supposed to be happy. I'm sorry. Oh, God. So this is one of those things. It's another thing now that you know it. Whenever you see that, you know, one, it's a quote, and two, whenever you use it, if you've got that 40 words or more, scoot it over. Okay? And don't use the quote marks, because quote marks just tell us it's a quote. This is just another way of saying it. Okay. Well, that was another thing is I wanted to point out. What's our rule for using a colon? What's full sentence before it, right? So let's check and see if, I don't know if this is Aaron or me, because, I went through and re-edited these too, so even if it was Aaron, whose fault is it ultimately? The teachers. So even kids see the standards and stereotypes that we hold the rest of the world to, as Kavanaugh states in his article, Idols in the Marketplace. We don't have to tell people anything he states. We're just saying, look, as he states in his article. But hey, we're going to give a quote, so boom, pop that colon in there. Since we don't want those quotes unattached, just thrown in like those eggs on top of that cake mix we're making and thrown in the oven, no, we've got to hook them to our sentences. One of the easiest ways, well, one, if you have any he said, she said, which we do have Kavanaugh states, that's a he said, but there's other words in between it, right? So once those other words interrupt that right before our quote, then we've got to say, is this a full sentence? Well, yeah, we could put a period there and not even tell anybody, give a direct quote. We're just saying, I read the article, he says it. Right? And so since we can put a period there, we can use that colon there. Yay, Aaron. See, we'll give him the credit, right? Now that colon is, notice it's outside of those quote marks. And it's outside of those quote marks because what is our rule about colons with that final quote mark? Remember, colons and semicolons are weird. So in American English, we always end the quote and then put them outside. Okay? Commas and periods, they're like our most normal thing, so those always go inside the final quote mark. And then exclamation points or questions, does it go with the quote or does it go with your whole sentence? Which you should try to avoid questions in your paper. Your paper's the answer to everything. Quote marks, right? Exclamation points in a paper like this, unless it's in a quote, and we don't do exclamation points in academic papers. So we get really excited about it in academics, but we just don't show that. We got to be cool. Whatever. So that's, the basics there. Let's see if it'll work. Come on. Why don't you work? Oh. Plug it in. I've done that twice this week. I think I'm glad it's Friday. Oh, wow. It's like magic. Okay. So, he gives us this first one, and then he does the description. And that's what we want to think about, is looking at these descriptions, because the more detailed, just like if the more you are able to be detailed in essay 1 with your description, the more you really kind of think about it and focus on it, and the more you have to say in your paper, right? Make it longer. But also in terms of this, the more it will help you find those things to talk about. You want to do the best thing for yourself in making this this essay successful, you may not end up putting everything you write in there. You may end up kind of summing it up. When we looked at that gold medal commercial, the one about women must bake and bake often, there were a lot of things he didn't mention. He just kind of summed up overall there. But the more you notice all those details, the more it will give you ideas of, oh, I see this, I see that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is the title. You don't have to. It's kind of like choosing to use that Idols of the Marketplace. Let's see how it reads. I mean, it really comes down to how it reads. Like, he's used the title up here, so if he used it like right here again, it would be repetitive. But this is far enough away that in Kia's, and really when you're reading out loud with those parentheses for the citation, we don't really read them. In Kia's 2014 Kia Soul hamster commercial, Lady Gaga applause, it begins on an empty beach, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, can you once you mention the title, yeah, you can use it again. You just don't want to, just in general style, you don't want to be repetitive. So, and he goes on and he gives us that description. And he gives us 2 paragraphs, and I would say that's the most you want to do because, again, we've got to get to this analysis. And I want to be able to put check marks beside, yes, you've got analysis there. So then he says, and he acknowledges it. To most people, this would be fun and funny. But what they don't realize, it's implying this stereotype, very common thing. People feel they aren't good enough. Okay, this is cool. This is all what he thinks, what he sees there. So what? Great. Again, we don't let it become just this philosophical exercise about society or whatever. We've got to integrate evidence. So when the hamsters are bigger and working out, nobody's paying attention to them, almost as if they aren't there. The fact that the people in the gym, so here's more evidence, are already fit and healthy makes the hamsters stand out more, as if they're outsiders. And then, the factor, and then so he gives those. And then he sums it up. So he's got his evidence, he's got his main point, his evidence, and then he's done a little more talking at the top. So it's not about just exact balance, but he says here it's almost as if the advertiser is saying that if people are big and overweight, they'll embarrass themselves and not be able to talk to women. And then he moves us along just like we would with a story where we're not retelling it because we already described it up there. So after they've worked out, changed their looks, they show up, now they're skinnier. The fact they were only treated like this after they changed how they look goes to show how society works. We hold ourselves and other people to a standard that we like. And so you can see, again, this really is about thinking about what is this saying, not just this commercial, but in terms of society, this kind of bigger issue. And he goes on and talks about that. And then he wraps it up, and he wraps it up into, okay, I've kind of said, here's how society does this, and he pulls us back to the biggest problem. The problem is not just in this commercial, but most commercials where we see people that don't look like the average person we would see in our classrooms and jobs. In fact, the body type portrayed in advertising is portrayed naturally by only 5% of American females, according to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, a nonprofit organization since 1976. So he gave his quote first, and he says, in fact, he runs into the quote there, and then he has this only by American females according to, and he gives who it is, so we have the author. Now, Kelly's the one that fixed this. What should Kelly have done right after she said National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders? Boom. Yeah. So it should have been in, because it's, don't know the date, D. They didn't, whenever you look this up, that way, they didn't give the date on this. It was just on the website. So, and then all we have to have is the section, because when you look at this website, it has different sections, and one of them is, did you know? And then they have that. And then, I don't know, what you can do, or if you need help, or, whatever. There are other sections. So here, boom, that, and then date like that. Save. And I'll re-upload that, right? So that's really key. And remember that ND is just small, the period's in it. I'm not a dummy. There's no date, whatever. Don't worry about it. So there we've got the author, the date, and the location. Just like that. Author, date, location, 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 author, date, location. That's what you remember with APA. And so he talks about it in general. And he does this thing here where he says, don't get me wrong. There isn't a problem with nice things. Now, that's a little bit informal. Is that okay? I was okay with it. It's one of those things, again, so much of writing, when you're thinking about who you're writing to, is about, I mean, it's got to start. You have what's in your head. You have what's in your heart. You've got to get those ideas out. That's what you're doing it for, to share those ideas. Whether you have to do it or you want to do it, either way, you're getting those ideas out. But then that other half of writing is really thinking about, who am I writing to? Oh, that'd be whom, right? I just did the test. I'm writing to him. Okay? Whom am I writing to? And when we're talking, we don't have to worry about it as much. But thinking about that person on the other side of it, writing for me, I'm okay with this. I kind of like this at the end, this little bit of transition. Don't get me wrong. There isn't a problem with having nice things and working out to be fit and having a better body. To me, that's a really nice, smooth transition. If you were writing for someone who was just like this all the time and said, call me Mr. or Miss or whatever, would it work? I'd be real thoughtful about it, right? So instead of that, I could just ditch it and say there isn't a problem with having nice things and working out to be fit and have a better body. I got to fix it. Because we just have two things, having nice things, working out to be fit and have a better body. I see that as one thing. So we don't need that comma there. So we could just get rid of that. I was okay with it. If it was all over the paper, if the whole paper's too informal, am I going to have a problem with it? Yeah, we're working on this formal writing. But this moment that just kind of pulls it back a little bit worked for me as a reader. And that is the magic. I can teach you a whole lot of science. Don't put that comma there. Put the date here, author, date, location, all of that. These are rules, and you do them this way. Style, who you're writing to on every occasion, I can teach you about that. But you bring your own to that. That's every situation, each of us as individuals having our own style, our own voice, and figuring out how do I fit that in with Kelly or with this other teacher or with, I'm writing to this general audience and I don't even know who they are, right? What's the time, the situation? How do I need to voice that? And so that really is the art, the true art of writing, is saying, how do I reach this audience? I can just give you examples.
So like, we don't want to do like a hardcore like essay about how this is messing up society, but more like how it's creating humor. Can we do that as well?
Well, we're going to look at one. Let's take a look at Luis's real quick, but just to point out, he does author, date, location, right? Author, date, location, new page, references, alphabetical order, and he decided to cite that one from the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, so he has to have one more. If you're going to use something from somewhere else, you got to cite it. You got to cite it, okay?